Hey everyone, I'm ready if you are. We finally got it working. So, can you hear me back there if I talk like this? Okay, I'll try to talk really loud. I usually talk pretty loud anyway, but if you need me to bump it up, just let me know. So what we were going to talk to you guys about today was fall prevention, a little bit of balance, back pain management, a little mix of those things. And what we really wanted to focus the presentation on was kind of what the subtitle is right here. Reducing falls is more than just picking up throw rugs or drop cords, because when you hear about traditional fall prevention, or when someone tells you how to not fall, there's the obvious things: turn on the lights, pick up any rugs and cords that are laying around the ground. But those things are really helpful. But at the end of the day, preventing falls is a lot more than just that. So to kind of start with a little facts about falling and defying some of those aging challenges. So how do falls affect people in general? So they're the leading cause of TBIs, which are brain injuries when you fall and hit your head. And about 1 in 4 older adults, which is classified as 65 plus, fall every year. Yep, about a quarter or more. So chances are someone knows someone that's had a fall, at least one person. And in 2019, about 83% of hip fracture deaths and 80% of ER visits from the fractures occurred due to falls. So that just goes to show that if when people do fall and have something like a hip fracture, it turns into much more of an actual life-threatening issue, because of the hospitalization, the healing process, and it's so much more than just falling and hurting your hip at that point. And then 1 out of 10 falls result in an injury that restricts your daily activity for at least a day. A lot of times it's even more than that. So kind of going back to what causes the falls then when that happens. There's the things we talked about already: the lighting, the clutter, slippery floors, bunched up rugs, all important, but that's not our primary focus. Otherwise, I would just come in, tell you to make sure your area is clean, and then I would have left. There's a lot more to it than just that. Poor footwear, orthotics, if you wear those, that can be something that can prevent falls as well. But again, that's important, but that's something that can be kind of quickly changed, just making sure you're wearing a supportive shoe. Again, not really the main focus. Medications, so polypharmacy, being on a lot of different medicines. Certain ones cause dizziness. Certain ones can combine with other ones and cause dizziness and things like that. Low blood pressure can cause dizziness. So there's the pharmacy aspect. Any sort of visual and vestibular impairments. We'll get into that a little bit more in a second. But basically, if there's anything wrong with our inner ear and how our nerves talk with our head, where you are in space, kind of our vestibular system, visual impairments, whether that be just straightforward, far-sighted, nearsighted, cataracts, things like that can all contribute as well. There's the decreased strength and power, so just your ability in general to get up and down from a chair, or if you stumble stepping off a curb, can your body absorb that impact so you can stay upright? And then impaired proprioception, which is sort of the body's ability to orient itself in space. We'll get into that a little bit more going forward as well, kind of what proprioception is and how to manage it. But and then also poor body mechanics. So if you're going to do something like get up from the floor, pick something up, are you setting yourself up for a fall by how you're doing those things? So there's a lot more going on than just that first bullet point about making sure your area is clean, that all combine together to set you up for a fall or not going forward. With all that in mind, there's some common misconceptions with aging. So muscle mass, strength, range of motion all have to decrease. So what's considered normal? So normally there is going to be a slight decrease in these things as you age. It's just something that's going to happen with the aging process. But when it gets to a certain point, it's actually not considered normal. So after age 30, you actually do start to lose muscle mass. So myself right now, I'm actually in the process of losing muscle technically just through my aging process. But it's usually something very small, like down to a couple percent per year. But when you get up to 10, 15% muscle loss per year, it's something called sarcopenia, which is actually more of a pathological muscle wasting condition. So it's actually not normal to go from being a nice, strong, younger individual to suddenly feeling like you have no strength and then just chalking it up to older age. It's actually possible to put on muscle and all those kind of things, even through the aging process. People that are in their 60s, 70s, 50s, even 80s, can at least put on a little bit of muscle or at least maintain that muscle. It's not necessarily normal to just lose all of your strength. The other one, similar, is bone loss and fractures are inevitable. Kind of based off that same thought process, our bone mineralization is going to go down as we age, somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 1 to 2% a year after menopause, or maybe closer to that 1% for men as you age. But again, that's something that through exercise and the right training, you can actually keep that bone mineral density staying nice and solid. So if we do have a fall, we prevent that downward spiral we talked about of fractures and then hospitals and then the mortality rate that happens after that. I've actually seen, is it like more of an anecdote, I've seen people in the past who have had on the edge of osteoporosis, kind of in the 60s age group, and then go back for bone mineral testing after several months of training, and they're back in the normal range. So at a certain point, you can actually stop that demineralization process. Again, it's going to happen to an extent, but we can prevent these things from becoming the reason you lose your mobility and fall and things like that through the aging process. So all that to be said, the third bullet point, falls must therefore happen. Falls are not considered a normal part of aging because these other things happen in the prior bullet points. They lead to falls, and because they're so common, it seems like that's just something that's going to happen, but it's actually not considered a normal thing to happen through the aging process is starting to fall. Pain or any kind of extra dynamic movements will make exercise too hard, and then you have a risk of falling. It's a fair point that doing exercise and things that might challenge your balance, if it's not done safely, could lead to a fall. But having a nice, safe exercise program does actually not increase the risk of falls. It's going to decrease the risk of falls as you kind of progress through that. So just the idea of exercising, getting on your feet, or having pain being the reason that you feel restricted in doing your exercises or movement, or it may be a little scary to do those things. They don't increase risk of falls if they're done safely. At the end of the day, they'll actually lead to decreased falls. And then that kind of sums it all up for that last bullet point. Aging is going to happen. So kind of what's the point then? The point is there's a lot of research that shows you can minimize, or even to an extent stop that process from happening, or slow it down to a point that you go through life and you don't have those falls, and the reason you start losing mobility isn't because you just start getting weak through age. So you can slow down those things. And just as a little example, I had a little video pulled up. It's just a minute or so that I was want to share with you guys, if I can get it to pull over. Okay. Whoops. May be a little hard to. Yeah, I'm trying. Down. Oh, I see. The problem I was having is that it's hard to see is that it right there? No, go right. All the way to the right. Go right. There we go. Thank you. It was hard to see where the cursor was.
A few weeks ago, we introduced you to a few of our local Central Florida seniors headed to the National Senior Games in New Mexico. And one woman grabbing attention, headlines, and hearts is 103-year-old Hurricane Hawkins. I love her anyway. I love her. Kenneth Craig shows us how she's not just grabbing gold medals, she's making history in a big way.
And they're off to the races at the National Senior Games in Albuquerque, New Mexico. At 103 years young, Julia Hurricane Hawkins
She's moving it.
set a new record as the oldest woman to compete on an American track. She won gold in the 50-meter in her age group Monday.
I thought it'd be neat to run at 100 and do the 100-yard dash.
The next day, she ran the 100 in just over 46 seconds. And while she didn't break the record, she won her division, and hearts everywhere. The centenarian laced up her shoes to run just 2 years ago. She says she likes to train in her garden in Louisiana.
I have an acre of land, 50 kinds of trees, and I'm working on them all the time.
Hawkins has plenty of support from family.
I call her a little old lady in tennis shoes.
The former teacher has been running circles around the competition for years. She says running is what keeps her mind and body sharp. Hawkins hopes to inspire others to be healthy and realize age is just a number. Kenneth Gregg, CBS News, New York.
What an inspiration, right? Yes, and I love that she said she wasn't an athlete when she was younger, but she got into it when she got older. And I keep seeing the seniors moving, and that just tells me that this is what you have to do. Keep moving. Yep. Keep moving. And have such a positive attitude. She says every day past 103 is a miracle. Yes. Yeah. So I wonder what she does to kind of what she snacks on. I wonder if she does artificial sugars. She has a garden. She'll be on a Wheaties box. Yeah, that would be great. That'd be great to see. Yeah.
Let me get this back over. Okay. This is just one more little clip. This one's shorter. It's just a minute long. I thought was interesting as well. So just for some background, these are called the senior games, and they actually have all different age group divisions. And it's just an example to show that, that it's possible to achieve these kind of things with some of the stuff we're going to talk about.
At 100 years old, Arthritis broke 5 world records at the San Diego Senior Olympics, even in 100-degree temperatures. Don spoke to the San Diego Times about his record-breaking run.
I wanted to do it because it's a 12-year-old record of some Japanese guy.
Don crushed the age group world records in the 100-meter dash, becoming the first centurion to clear the high jump. Discus, and even a world record-breaking long jump for his age group. This is a pretty remarkable accomplishment for someone at any age, but at 100, it's even more inspiring.
It's good to see that nobody at my age ever ran faster under conditions.
Be sure to watch Inside Edition.
All right. Now I just need to get this off the screen real quick. There it is. Okay, so those just kind of go to show, kind of put to video to words that, people that really focus on maintaining that strength and that power, you saw him do the pole vault, that requires impact. And, his bone mineral density has to be able, even though it's cushioned, he has to be able to take that impact of falling onto his body after he does the pole vault. And it's just from a consistent training on working on his balance, his strength, and all those kind of things. So I just thought that was interesting to show. So if all that's the case, kind of what are a lot of the barriers to this free movement that's going to prevent falls, help with pain, and all those kind of things? So there's the psychosocial factors, not having the confidence, feeling a little bit more cautious, which is a valid concern if you feel like you're off balance or weaker. It's understandable that some of those things would hinder people from getting out there and trying to work on their strength and balance and those things. But that's one of the main barriers. Also, any type of increased or chronic pain or tension in the muscles. We feel pain, we don't want to move because it makes it feel better when you're not using it. But on a similar way, a lot of studies show that movement really is medicine. It sounds kind of cliche, but they've shown time and time again in research that the more people move, the less pain they have overall. Again, done in a reasonable and safe way. The more movement you can have, the less pain you actually have. Any sort of decreased strength or related stiffness that's already present is going to contribute to that kind of downward spiral of kind of doing less and less gradually over time. And then, it kind of sneaks up on you, and all of a sudden it's kind of one of those, I'm not able to get out of my chair all of a sudden. It kind of sneaks up on you. Any decreased balance, we'll get into that a little bit more as well in the next slide. But having decreased balance in general is obviously going to be a risk for falls and a barrier to that movement. Going back to those mindsets of those misconceptions about just the aging process in general, having just that mindset of, I'm kind of past the point of being able to work on these things. I'm just kind of accepting that this is part of the aging process, is a barrier. And then, the difficulty finding time or knowing where to start. That's kind of a barrier to anything in life, just not having the time to do it or knowing where to begin, just getting that initial step started is a big barrier as well. The tricky thing with this is that these barriers, they slowly and kind of compound on each other over time. It might be hard to see, but there's a picture, the pain cycle, where if you have pain, it makes you kind of tense and guarded, and it restricts how much you move. Then you start feeling weak from all of that. You lose your function a little bit. It causes any kind of emotional and mental stress as well, which leads to more pain. And so that's kind of the cycle that tends to happen. And the tricky thing is that cycle can start with any of those things. So that's why it's such a kind of a vicious cycle, is you don't always have to have pain first. You could have some emotional stress first, and that makes you feel like not doing much, and then you have some pain. Or you could have tight muscles, and it makes you not want to move, and then it leads to those other things. So you can kind of slip into that cycle anywhere on that cycle, and it all kind of leads to some barriers of movement. So that's kind of where people may relate to some of these issues. So all that being said, how do we start moving then? So the first step is to understand that it's kind of a process. Those people that were running the 100-yard dash at 100 years old, they didn't do it overnight. It's a process that takes some time. And just for some insight, it can take up to 6 to 8 weeks to really start putting on strong muscle, and about 8 weeks to really get your balance nice and solid. But that's not to say it doesn't start earlier. That's just kind of when there's really, really notable changes. You feel nice and solid. But after just a few weeks, you can start making progress. But that's just to show that it's a process that takes some time. And so you don't get discouraged if you start exercising and things like that, or working on your balance after just a couple days and you're still not there yet. It's a process that takes some time, but it does start to show results. Going back to the things I said earlier, balance is a literal balance between three systems. Does anyone, without cheating, does anyone kind of know what balance is? Does anyone have an idea of what they think balance is, or what makes up balance? Besides you, Dave. Sorry? Yeah. So that's a good point. That's definitely part of it. So that's kind of going to the vestibular system. So without getting too in the weeds, all the fluid in our ears and how the nerves connect with our neck and to tell us where we are in space. So if I close my eyes and I know I'm turning my head left to right, that's kind of how gravity is affecting us, is our vestibular system. So our ability to orient where we are in space, kind of compared to gravity and everything like that, is our vestibular system. And it does have a lot to do with our inner ears. Our vision, so obviously being able to see, know where we are, to look around, that's another part of the main system. And then our proprioception, which is another kind of hard one to conceptualize, but that's also part of our body's ability to know where we are in space, but it's more so as related to ourselves. And what I mean by that is, if I just relax my arm and I start straightening and doing this with my arm, I can tell if my arm is lowered or raised, because of how my joint receptors and those type of more cellular things are going on to actually tell you where your body is. If you've ever been walking and you go to roll your ankle and you kind of catch yourself really quick, you don't really think to yourself, I'm rolling my ankle, I need to fix it. It just kind of happens. That's what proprioception is. And then, so those are the three main systems, the vestibular, vision, and proprioception. They all work together as a balance to balance. And then, but not forgetting about just having the strength and the range of motion ability in general to do those things. So that kind of puts into words an explanation that balance is more than just, I feel a little off, or I see someone stumbling a little bit. There's actual components that make up balance, and they all work together in different portions to help you stay on your feet. We have a couple things. Yep. Oh, sorry, range of motion. Yep. So just having, the functional range to move your legs around to stay balanced is also part of it as well. Yep, you're welcome. So we have a couple things that we can do then to actually examine balance. on a more objective scale than just saying, oh, you look a little off today. They might change day by day. There's actual tests we can do that look at each of these components to say, how is your balance doing by numbers? And so we have something called the Berg Balance Scale, which is one of these. Would anyone be interested in running through a couple of them, or I can just explain them? But if anyone wants to come up and go through them with me, they can.
Sure.
It's okay if you don't. Yeah, there we go. All right, so I'm just gonna grab this for a second. So they start off kind of simple and they kind of progress. So the first one is, could I have you just stand in front of the chair and just, can I have you turn around too, like you're gonna sit down? And then I'm just gonna have you sit down. Yep, and then stand back up, okay? So the ability to sit and stand, the ability to, while you were sitting, to hold yourself right up for 2 minutes, which I'm not gonna make you just sit there for 2 minutes, to be able to hold your balance while you're sitting. The next one is going to be also being able to transfer from chair to chair. The next one is going to be standing unsupported with your eyes closed. So what I would have you do is stand normal and then just close your eyes for me and trying to hold your balance. But the more, and you can open them again for me, the more impaired our balance is, I've seen people before, they're nice and fine, and then as soon as they close their eyes, you almost have to catch them. So that's part of the test as well. Standing with your feet together. So I would have you stand with your feet together. And then for certain lengths of time, I would just monitor to see how much sway there is or anything like that. Then standing on one leg, if you feel comfortable doing that. Yep. And then you can put your foot back down. Yep. So I would time how long they can stand on one leg on each side. Another one would be, I would have you stand kind of how I am right now, kind of facing everyone. And then without taking a step, I would have you try to reach forward about 6 inches. Yep. without hitting him in the face, and then stand back up tall. Another one would be to, we don't have an object, but act like you're picking up a shoe or something off the floor. Okay. Standing, looking over your shoulder as far back as you can. Yep. And then the other shoulder. There you go. Another one's turning 360 degrees. So just a big circle. Okay. Then the other way, back to back. Yep. We don't have steps right now, but another one would be steps. So you can just do some high knees, like you're going up steps. Okay. And that's pretty much the extent of one of them. Thank you for demonstrating some of those. Yep. So, yes. I'm going to get into those in just a second. Yep. Good question, though. So that kind of, it does take just a little longer than that because we time them and we really want to look for imbalances. The more balance impaired you are, the harder it's going to be. Your balance seems very good. So, some of them weren't necessarily that difficult. But what we can do by looking at all of those is we can tease apart which ones were harder and for what reasons. So for example, say you're standing nice and still and she went to turn her head like this and kind of had one of these. We have a nice stable base of support, and it's the turn that threw us off. So that's challenging our vestibular and vision because we're having a sudden motion. So if you feel like you can walk okay, but then turning throws you off, it kind of clues us in onto what part of those balance components is causing some of the issue. So for example, if that was the case and I was giving her some exercises to work on balance, I may have you somewhere safe where you could grab on, have you walk while you're doing head turns, or looking up and down while you walk, because that clues us in on what we need to focus on for the exercises for you. Say, for example, all that looks good, but putting your feet together is really hard and you start wobbling. You're taking away some of that base of support, so your proprioception, your body's ability to sense where it is in space, because you have less support holding you up. Then if you go to one foot and it's really, really hard, it also goes to show that maybe your proprioception's not up to par. Closing your eyes, you could stand here nice and fine, close your eyes like I mentioned, and then all of a sudden you're off balance. It's because maybe you're relying heavily on your vision. And when you take that away, the other systems aren't up to par to be able to compensate for it. So even though a lot of the testing things look like simple tasks, they're designed to show you where some of those imbalances are. to your point, it's 5 times sit to stand. So basically that one is how long it takes you to stand up and sit down 5 times. Again, seems really simple, just standing and sitting like this. But they've taken a lot of, like, thousands and thousands of people, and they say, how long does it take all these people to do it? And then how many of these people fall? And then they find statistically significant data that show, oh, like, by statistics, it's considered important that people, the number is 12 seconds, that generally, without other things going on, if it takes you longer than 12 seconds to do that, you have more of a fall risk. And that would be more going to the point of the strength. Like, do you have the strength to stand up and sit down? Is your body able to orient itself enough to weight shift up and down without losing your balance? The TUG stands for timed up and go. It's the other test that's very common, where you would stand up, walk 10 feet, turn around, and come sit back down. That one has a cutoff score of about 10 seconds. And so you have to be able to stand up quickly, walk without losing your balance, turn, which gets some of that vestibular and vision stuff going on, and then walk back and sit down in less than 10 seconds. And then any more than that is usually considered a fall risk. So there's several other ones, but that's kind of a major 3 that we use. So it's good to put those in the perspective that there's things that you can actually put numbers and tests to and see how you perform. So I'll see people that will come in, be really off balance. We'll kind of figure out where some of those things are. We'll work on balance, and then we retest the score. And once your balance gets above a certain point, they usually progress after several weeks. They can be less of a fall risk. Their balance will feel better. And it's a way for you to truly feel like, by numbers, I'm being more balanced. And it makes it a little bit more real than just saying, like, oh, I don't look as off balance today or something like that. So that's the way we can find deficits, plan accordingly, but there's several other tests and things we can do. So going back to that real quick, the other thing we could do is, so say nothing moving the head around makes you feel off balance, your strength seems very good, but the second you try to put one foot in front of the other is when you fall. So then we could design interventions to, standing on one foot, doing toe taps, kind of reaching, tapping in different directions, like that, standing on something soft like a pillow and just trying to hold your balance. If you're also a little weak at the same time, you can have someone stand on something a little unbalanced and do mini squats to try to work on both things at the same time. So there's kind of an endless supply of ways you can try to find these deficits and work on your balance and strength at the same time. The key is going to, and then just for some general guidelines of, that all sounds good and well, but kind of where's a starting point then? So what's kind of recommended is about 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity or 75 minutes of high intensity activity, and that's per week, not per day, per week. About 2 days of resistance training and about 3 days of balance training. But balance, you can always work on a little bit more. Your body doesn't need as much to recover as it does from working out your muscles. So that's kind of general guidelines of what all the research has shown of this is what keeps people healthy. Now, just as a disclaimer, those are just general guidelines. Everyone's different. Everyone has different, pains or medical conditions, other things going on that you may need to start a little less than that. You may be able to go start off even more than that. That's just kind of as a general population where they kind of recommend to put some numbers to it. And then as people are working on these things, the key is to slowly increase the dosage of activity or difficulty. Again, that's going to be very individualized. It would be really hard for me to give you one simple structure thing because everyone in this room would have something slightly different for their needs and requirements. But just again, to give you some information, a rule of thumb is the 2 for 2 rule, where if, say, I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 of a squat, if I can do 2 more reps than that 2 weeks in a row, then that tells you your body's ready to do more. So say 3 sets of 10 is really hard, I can barely do it, and then after a couple weeks, I can do 12 a couple times. Then that shows you my body's a little bit stronger and I can increase the intensity. The other ways to talk about intensity is just your subjective response to exercise, which is the RPE scale. It's your rating of perceived exertion. So you can see here the numbers 1 through 10. It just gives you a gauge of where you are. So say you do an activity and you're breathing really heavily, but you can hold a short conversation, that would be considered 4 to 5, more moderate intensity. So you can keep track of that and say, okay, I'm walking this amount of distance per day. It's really hard to hold a conversation. I'm breathing a little heavy, but it's not too bad. It's about a 4 on the scale. Then as you do that more, you can say, oh, I feel more like what the description for 3 is. I can hold a whole conversation while I'm walking that distance. It tells you that your body isn't being as exerted as it is. And okay, maybe I can walk a little further now. So those are 2 different tools of how you can learn when to progress your exercise, your balance training to prevent falls and all those kind of things.
What difference does it make between doing 3 sets of 10 or 30?
That's a good question. So basically the difference is our muscles, each muscle is designed a little bit differently. Some muscles are designed more for endurance, like our back muscles, which is why, they're designed for more endurance because we need to be upright walking around all day. Some muscles are built more for power. They fatigue more quickly. And that's due to really into the science of the cellular differences in the muscles, how much oxygen they use up and things like that. And so depending on how many reps and sets you do, can actually affect how those muscles respond that are built more for power or built more for endurance. So with all the research they've done, they've kind of found that if you do anywhere from 8 to 12 reps of something, so you go to do squats, you do 8 to 12 of them, somewhere around 10 is kind of like a standard, then that is like a muscle building stage where doing that amount of reps is going to help build muscle. When you start getting to where you're doing 15, 20 plus of something, then that's working more on endurance. The muscle fibers themselves, they could grow a little bit, but it's really training them to be able to use oxygen more efficiently and do more endurance. Then you have the opposite extreme, like power lifters that only do one big, strong movement. Anywhere from 3 to 5 reps works on power. So depending on how many reps and sets you're doing can actually prep the muscle for different things, whether it's growing or becoming more endurance, which is why endurance athletes, they train by running miles and miles and miles, and sprinters, Usain Bolt never trained running, marathons because his muscles didn't need to adapt that way. So that's a really good point. If you're trying to put on muscle and you're doing 3 sets of 10 of something and you're like, I'll just do all 30 because I'm getting all 30 in at the same time. But if your body's able to do 30 straight, that means it's not getting the resistance it needs to build the muscle. So after 10 reps, if you're trying to build muscle, you should feel like you need a break, or it means you're not doing enough weight. If you can do 30 straight, you're putting your body more in an endurance state than building muscle. Does that make sense? Yeah, so it actually makes a difference because I've had people in the past, and they think it's great. They're like, I did all my exercises, but I'm done in 3 minutes because I did them all straight. And I was like, I'm really glad you're doing all of them, but that means it's too easy if you can do them all straight. If you're trying to build muscle to prevent falls and things like that, after you get to your target rep, it should feel like you need a little bit of a break to recover before you start the next set. And does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. This last picture down here is just a visual representation of the vision vestibular proprioception, how it integrates with your brain and your body, and just shows that there's more to balance than just you feel off balance or not. Okay. So all that being said, why am I thinking it's so important? Because at the end of the day, it's what helps preserve independence. A mix of doing fall and strength training to prevent falls translates to more independence, more confidence, all these things that are going to keep you feeling well and moving. Less need for assistance or care after falls, because like we talked about, all that resistance can actually help with bone density. So if you do have a fall, you might be able to bounce right back on your feet and not be part of that majority that their fracture just happens. Because just as an aside, like we just went into the science of the muscle building a little bit, as your muscles and as weight is compressing on bones, it gives signaling to the cells that say, I need to be stronger. Bodybuilders get really big muscles because they're constantly telling their body, I need to be able to lift more weight. So it actually makes a structural difference in the bone by doing weight resisted exercises. So squatting with your body weight, curling your arms with weights on them actually physically makes your bones denser from all the pulling on the muscles and the compression. All those things will improve your ADLs, or activities of daily living, your quality of life, your overall happiness, feeling like you can go out, do more, and feel more independent. There's also the aspect of community and social health, being able to engage with others, whether it's going on community walks, walking to and from the pool, the clubhouse, all those kind of things, the psychological factors that come into play with that, and then even chemical changes in the brain. They're not exactly sure why, but exercise prevents diabetes and things like that. They just know it's good for you. They don't really understand the exact reason it regulates blood sugar so well. But even chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, all these chemicals are truly released as you exercise. And they also happen to be your feel-good, happy chemicals. They also happen to be chemicals that help prevent Alzheimer's and things like that. There's a lot of studies that show when you exercise and certain chemicals are released, like the serotonin and dopamine and things like that, it can prevent things like Alzheimer's from progression. Again, some people may be really into exercising and those things happen genetically, but there's a lot of research that shows that it helps prevent those kind of things. Good blood flow, all these different things. So it's more than just getting nice and strong. Yes?
You mentioned bone density.
Mm-hmm.
So, like if somebody's already been diagnosed with osteopenia or
Mm-hmm.
osteoporosis, can you actually increase your bone density? Is that possible?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And I wish I had a more black and white answer, but it depends, like all things. If say you're relatively healthy, you have a little bit of osteopenia, which if anyone doesn't know, that's just, you're not quite to osteoporosis, but your bones are getting a little bit more brittle. I've seen people before where it actually does go back up into the normal range. So it's possible to really slow down the bone degradation process, or even reverse it to an extent. It's not going to go back to like when we were in our 20s, or anything like that. Just, they're gonna lose density as you get older, but there is research that shows you can really slow it down, or even bump it up a little bit. So it is possible to go up a little bit. Same with muscle mass, like we talked about. You may not go from being an average sized person to winning a Mr. Olympia, but you can slow down that muscle wasting process. They've done MRI studies with people that have been really fit and active their whole life and are in their 70s compared to a healthy 30-year-old, and their muscle mass actually looks very similar on MRI. So it's different for everyone, but it is possible. It is possible. So other benefits. Exercise is multifaceted. Several things can be trained at once. So like we talked about, realistically, people aren't going to have the sometimes it's hard to have the drive to do 1 million exercises for 3 hours a day. That's just not realistic. So the good thing with some of the exercise programming is you can tackle several things at once. So like I mentioned, say you feel you find that strength is part of the reason you feel a little off balance, but then also your proprioception, you just feel like anytime you have a less base of support, your body has a hard time of knowing where it is. Like I mentioned before, we could have you stand on something soft like a pillow or a foam pad and do mini squats at the same time. That's going to work on your balance and the strength of your legs at the same time. So it's possible to be very multifaceted and work on several things at once. So you don't necessarily have to say, I'm going to do balance training for an hour today. Tomorrow I have to do aerobic training for an hour and then strength training for an hour. You can combine it all to all work together to work towards that 150 minutes a week, and it be relatively manageable, 30 minutes a day kind of thing, or, maybe a little bit more, just a couple days of the week. It's very multifaceted. Decreased pain, that's another big one, whether it's contributing to falls or from weakness or whatever the reason is. Having stronger muscles, a stronger core, increased mobility, it's going to lead to all these things. So less hip, knee, back pain, posture, energy, stiffness, fatigue, all those things, it's going to all tackle at once, which is why exercise is so important, not just for these things, but for prevention of falls as well. And then the more functional the activity, the more transference it has. So going back to that point of, of why it's so important and how to make it be more tolerable, because some people, they just don't like to exercise. It's just not fun to some people. So making it more functional is going to be the goal, to make it enjoyable and make it transfer. A lot of studies show that, you don't use it, you lose it. And basically how things transfer. So gymnasts, they have to practice walking on a balance beam because that's what they're going to be doing in the Olympics or whatever it is. So you have to do the activities you want to get back to doing. So for example, this person is doing a shoulder press, similar movement of raising up a grandkid or a child or something like that. The more functional you do the movement, the more it's going to transfer to your daily task and teach your brain those motor patterns. Thinking about doing a squat versus just, sitting doing the leg extensions, that's a great exercise. There's a time and a place for it, but there's other functional things we can be doing that translate better into balance, into functional goals as well. So you don't have to do 10 different exercises over the course of an entire hour. It could be a solid 2 or 3, maybe 4 movements that get the whole body working in a way that's going to promote balance and strength. And that could be enough. It doesn't have to just be so many isolated things that just take a long time and aren't as enjoyable to do. The other factor is just the overall decreased medical expenses too. Maybe not as important as some of the other things, maybe it is, but it's just another thing to keep in mind, that the stronger, healthier we are, the less we fall, have to go to the doctor, the less those kind of things pile up. Any questions about any of that so far? Okay. So all that, I wanted to touch on back pain a little bit, just because that's such a common thing we see that has to do with going down that spiral of losing strength, then losing your balance and all that kind of stuff. So again, just starting the exercise itself can actually resolve some of the back pain. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be specifically targeted to your back. The body's an amazing thing, the way it works together with itself. Sometimes just starting the exercise can help with the back pain. Working on your core strength, stabilizing your pelvis, the back extensors back here that hold you upright. Training all these muscles can really help with back pain. There's so many little muscles like your quads and hamstrings, all these things around the legs that hold your spine and pelvis where it needs to be. And sometimes just the deconditioning of those muscles is leading to a lot of the back pain. And then just as another aside, getting if you're having any kind of chronic back pain, it's always important to get a formal assessment because of how tricky pain can be. And sometimes back pain is coming from the knee or it's coming from the hip. It could be you're walking or sitting differently because of one of those issues and it's making your back hurts. I've even seen people, I ended up thinking that a lot of their back pain is coming from their neck because we realized there's so little mobility in the neck. They were constantly doing this whenever they were trying to look over their shoulder and getting chronic pain back here. So it's really important to look at the big picture and not just narrow in on the back. It could be coming from the back, but there's sometimes more to the story than that. So again, thinking function as far as addressing the back pain. So we want to have a nice strong core. Things like squats, sit to stands, even going up and down from a chair is going to work all the muscles that attach to the back, and it's going to work out all the muscles that attach to the core, which is going to keep the back nice and stable. The more relaxed our core is, and the more we're kind of slouched like this, the more pressure we have in our low back. Having a nice strong core actually pulls everything back up into alignment. So core strength is actually hugely important for back pain as well. Thinking about lifting things, carrying things, instead of doing leg extensions, we could be picking up weights or bags of groceries up and down. Thinking big functional things is the best way to address back pain. And like we talked about, the weight bearing, if it's more of to your point about the bone density, if some of that bone density issue is causing some of the pain, you can actually increase your bone density or slow down the degradation process for some people with those weight-bearing exercises. When lifting, really important to know, facing the feet towards the object. We don't want any twisting when we're lifting. We want to hinge the hips. And what I mean by hinging the hips is you let your hips come back like this, just like a hinge. And as you're hinging and bending your knees, we want to keep the knees in line over the toes and keep the stomach muscles nice and tight. By hinging the hips and bending the knees, it's going to let us lower down to what we're picking up versus just bending the knees and then having to hunch our back. So we need that combination of hinging the hips and bending the knees to keep a nice flat back. We don't want any arching like this when we go to pick something up. Engage those arm muscles when you go to pick up. Keep the stomach nice and tight, keeping the weight really close to the body. The further out we hold the weight from our body, the more it's likely to pull our low back just from the biomechanics of the weight being further away from the body. So we always want to lift close to ourselves. And one of the trickiest things I see people do in this process is you should extend your trunk at the same time as you're extending your knees and hips. So what I mean by that is if you go, sorry, I'm trying to be where people can see. If you go to hinge your hips and bend the knees and you've got a nice flat back and you get what you're going to pick up, then a lot of people either straighten their back first, which will pull the back, or they straighten the knees first, then they have to straighten the back, and then that pulls their back. So it's really important to work on doing those things at the same time. So as you hinge those hips, bend those knees, grab the weight, you should feel yourself pushing your hips forward at the same time the back's coming up. That's what's going to be the best technique to not pull the back. You can that picture is kind of small, especially for in the back, but it kind of shows that we want to keep the back nice and flat, keep the weight close to us, and extend all at the same time. That's going to help prevent that low back pain when we're lifting things. And all this ties back into balance as well, because the better we are with our body mechanics to lift things, the more stable we are. The stronger our core and legs are to pick things up or do functional activities, the more likely the less likely we are to fall. And then incorporating those other things like the stability ones we talked about, like standing on one foot or walking with turning your head, those all come into play together to help prevent falls. They all work cohesively together. So how can we help? This can be a really individualized process, as I mentioned. All the kind of guidelines I gave you and things we talked about are all for general population. Everyone's different what they have going on. Some people, like I mentioned, they may be able to find out their back pain is coming from their hip. We can strengthen the hip. Some people may have balance concerns, but they're nice and strong. They actually don't really need many squats and deadlifts and things like that. They just really need to work on maybe walking heel over toe because they have those proprioceptive deficits like that. Some people may have certain medical conditions that actually do require monitoring, like some people have certain spinal conditions where things are kind of slipped out of place or bulging discs, and there's certain positions that are better than others. For example, a bulging disc, sometimes leaning forward hurts more. If you have stenosis, which is narrowing of the spine, a lot of times leaning back hurts more because you're clamping down on that nerve. And so everyone's going to be different in what type of exercises is better for them. So it would be really hard to come up here and say, my thought was I wanted to give everyone, here's a great thing to go get started, work on everything, but everyone's going to be different, and what's safe for someone might not be safe for someone else. So it's a very individualized process, but just starting the process is the best for everyone. So whether it's something that is going to be safe for you, just standing and sitting from a chair, standing on a counter where you have somewhere you can hold on, and just going up on one foot, nice and slow. So certain things are going to be walking. Certain things are going to be good for everyone, but really getting down into that exercise programming is a pretty individualized process. So if you are curious about any more kind of one-on-one guidance with any of this, me and Dave in the back are happy to guide you along with some of these things, working more on fall prevention, pain management, strength, how you can work on all those things together. Here's some of our information. And then as well, we'll be around for a little bit. What we wanted to do was whoever is interested, we'll do little kind of 20-minute mini sessions where people can come in free of charge just to take a look at some of these things and chat about what you think is going on with your balance. We can even run through some of these things like the quick little berg or the sit to stand test and give you a score and say, you know what, you look great, you're good to go, give you some confidence that you're in a good spot, or here's some things we could possibly work on. So if anyone's interested in something like that, we'll be in the back kind of setting some of that up if you'd like. But other than that, does anyone have any questions about anything? Yeah.
What insurance do you take?
So we take most major insurances. Dave would know better about any specific ones we might not take, but I know we take most major insurances. What? Sorry. Oh. Oh yeah, Dave. yeah. He would have more. If anyone has a specific insurance question, we can go talk with Dave too. But we do take most major insurances. Mm-hmm. Taffy.
I don't have a question, but I just want to thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
He's my therapist.
Yeah. Thanks, Taffy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
First part of my life, I had really severe, neck and head and shoulder pain. And steroid injections, nothing helped. But he helped.
Thank you, Taffy. Yeah. Thank you, Taffy. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, you've been great to work with. Yeah, you've been great. But yeah, thank you. Hey, yes. So everything is one-on-one. And the reason we do that is because just, nothing against other therapists or places, but what we found is really helpful is, being with that person for the full time, being able to communicate the whole time, really see the details of what's going on. It's going to let us do our jobs better, and it's going to give you a better experience for your time. You could be doing something, I could tell you to do something and then have to go off to another patient. And then it's, I missed something that you might be doing a little bit wrong, or you might have a question. I'm not there to answer it. So I found people get a lot better results with that more one-on-one kind of thing. So as far as treatments, it's all one-on-one for the whole session. And then we also collaborate on, home exercise programs and things like that. Yep.
I think this is where I'm going next week. I have the muscles, is this like
TMJ? Yeah.
Okay, so you work with that too.
Yes, yeah. We work, again, going back to the point of all one-on-one, it lets us really take our time and dive into whatever's going on. We treat from plantar fascia and foot pain to Taffy's point, headaches and shoulder pain, back pain, sciatica, TMJ, combinations of all kinds of wild things. There's really athletes, younger athletes, older folks. There's really not a specific thing or demographic we don't treat, and we have that one-on-one time to really get down to the root of things with people. So we see and do TMJ, all of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Sorry. Yes, yeah, Monday through Friday. We're flexible with hours. But it's usually Monday through Friday. Mm-hmm.
What are your general hours, please?
General hours, so general business hours, kind of like an 8 to 5. But we do see people as early as 7. People that need to get somewhere before the kind of the business day starts, and then we do stay as late as well. As 6, sometimes even 7 o'clock, because we don't want to miss out on folks. We want everyone to have an opportunity to come in, especially people that come in after work and things like that. So anywhere from 7 to 7, we pretty much are able to get people in. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's another thing that everyone's case is kind of different. Some people have no insurance. Some people come in and they have, really great insurance. Everything's covered. There's no copay, no anything like that, and kind of everything in between. But what we try to tell people is we don't want that to be anything that hinders people from getting care. That's one of the reasons we do take most major insurances and aren't just private pay, because we want people that need to use their insurance and aren't trying to pay so much out of pocket for things to be able to come in and get therapy. And our main focus is getting people back on their feet and feeling better. So regardless of what the insurance case is, we always work something out with someone, and we always kind of sit down and figure something out. It is me and then Dave. Yep. It is the two of us. Yep.
But I just also wanted to let you know where you signed up on for their flyer. It has everything that you would need to know on there for their address in case you don't have your phone to take a picture of it. Everything is on there, so that way. And also, if you forget all that, you can just call me and I can get you the information as well.
Just
really quick. I'm gonna hack it just because I can't sit on my hands too long. The insurance question was asked a couple of times. If you have any specific questions, the easiest way that we can get you the most accurate information is if you give us a call. We do have some billing folks that work with us. They'll call your specific insurance with your specific plan and numbers and get you the exact details, because nobody likes surprises, especially when it comes to their wallets. So give us a call. We can get the exact numbers for you, and that way, like I said, everything's set up so that there's no surprise.
Yeah, and that can all happen beforehand. So even before your first visit, if we know you're coming in, we have that information. We can, like Dave said, we can get it to whoever needs to in the billing team, and then we can get you that information before anything else even happens. If there's any specific concerns or anything. Yep. Did you have a question earlier?
Do you typically have to have a doctor's prescription?
I'm glad you asked that, because that's a really good point I wanted to make. So physical therapy is a direct access thing now. I don't know if you know, Dave, how long it's been direct access, but it's not always been. Yeah. So anyone could be walking down the sidewalk past our clinic and come in and get treated with physical therapy. There's no requirement for a doctor's referral. Again, some cases, like someone has a post-op thing, a doctor may say, I'm going to only authorize 10 visits at a time. So there's some cases where that happens, but physical therapy is direct access. You come in and then we determine if there's a medical necessity. If therapy is good enough, or if we recommend going to your provider for something, or we think you're good to go. But there's no need to see a doctor first. Okay. Yeah. Come on in. Yeah, bring it on.
We can't absolutely do. If you have a primary care doctor, let us know, because they should know about what.
Oh yes, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. We do like to include them. So if you have a provider, we like to keep them in the loop of what's going on, but it's not necessarily you want it and they need to approve it. Isn't necessarily the case. All right, yeah, thank you. All right, well, if there's no more questions, me and Dave will be hanging around for a little bit if anyone has any specific questions. But thanks for coming out. Yeah, thanks.